Welcome to Athletic Skills Podcast, the show where we help sports coaches, S&C coaches, and PE teachers learn how they can impact their athletes' movement and physical development in a fun, practical way. I'm your host, Isaac, founder of Athletic Skills, and in today's episode, we chat to Francisco, who is founder and owner of Rustiq Fitness. Francisco discusses the importance of multi-sport participation for young athletes and the benefits of strength and conditioning training for children. He then busts some myths related to strength training for children and highlights the impact of fitness training on mental resilience and overall well-being. Francisco then shares some unique and unconventional training methods that he uses on his farm with equipment and shares how you can make S&C practical in your own setting. Now, unfortunately, in this episode, Francisco's camera wasn't working for the recording, so it's just the audio for this podcast today. But there's still lots of practical insights and some great information to take away into your coaching. Thank you very much, guys. Hope you enjoy the show. This podcast is brought to you by Brendan Chaplin Business Coaching. Brendan guides coaches and service-based entrepreneurs to deliver their best work, build a seven-figure lifestyle and performance business, and create a life of freedom. I started working with Brendan in September 2023, and it's been a great journey since I started working with him in launching my own business, Athletic Skills. Brendan has been fully invested in me and is a great person to chat with, to share ideas, and has vast knowledge and experiences to share also. The reason I picked to work with Brendan is that he has done it himself in launching businesses and has a similar background to myself in S&C and wants to live a life that you want. If you want to speak to Brendan on how he can help create a life of freedom and guide you on that journey, get in touch with him by one of the methods in the show notes and DM him the word coach, and he will start the conversation. You won't regret it, and there's a good chance it might just change your life too. Hi everyone, welcome to the Athletic Skills Podcast, and delighted to have Francisco on with me. So Francisco is founder and owner of Rustiq Fitness. So Francis, welcome to the show. Feel free to just give a bit of background on yourself and your journey to where you are now.
Thank you, Isaac. Hi everyone. I'm Fran, as Isaac said. I'm originally from Venezuela, actually. And then I live in Spain for around 10 years and been living in the UK nearly around 9 years now. So I've spent half of my life in Venezuela, half of my life in Europe. As a bit of background on my kind of sporting, physical activity career, or so to say, I started playing sports when I was 5. Over there, baseball is quite big. So I started playing baseball when I was 5 and basically play quite a lot of sports, mainly team sports, basketball, football, volleyball, baseball, obviously. But I mixed it up with a few individual sports like table tennis and a bit of athletics and things like that. So yeah, I've always done sports. I was kind of weirdly, I knew I was always going to be in sport or some sort of job or occupation around sports and physical activities. Here I am.
Yeah, I think you're definitely the first Venezuelan I've spoken to, so that's the first. So what's coaching like over there compared to now you're in England over here?
My coaching experiences was mainly with PE teachers and sports coaches. Funny enough, I never had a strength and conditioning coach, for so to say. Also a bit younger also, so back in the day, I'm not going to say my age, but back in the day, strength and conditioning for kids was definitely not a thing. So yeah, I basically had a lot of coaches, quite good coaches really. So I was quite lucky in that sense. And I had great opportunities, sporting opportunities when I was a kid.
And then what brought you over here and what is Rustiq Fitness as well that you're founder of?
The main thing that brought me to Europe was political, social situation in Venezuela. We left the country back in 2006. And I was actually, at the time, I was studying chemical engineering. I always knew I wanted to be a coach and sports coach and things like that. So I swiftly changed my degree and my career to sports science. So I studied sports science in Spain, did a basketball course, so I became a basketball coach and then personal trainer and then strength and conditioning coach too. So, yeah.
So I speak to a lot of coaches around having the knowledge of both technical side and the physical side, which you have, as you mentioned just there. So how does that help you as a coach, having the knowledge of how to deliver, how to coach technical stuff, and then also how to impact on people's movement and the fitness as well?
I think from a sporting background, it just really helped me doing a lot of sports, different sports. Yet most of the movements and most of the patterns are quite similar. So all the team sports, I would say, the movement patterns are the same, are very similar in terms of acceleration, deceleration, change of direction. And then the specifics of the sport, you might use your hands a bit more, you might use your feet a bit more. But yeah, I think the base of the movements are pretty much all the same. And if we go back to kids and children, physical activity, you run, jump, throw, push, pull, all that kind of thing. So that really helped me in my coaching experience. And that's something I replicate even now with my personal training and fitness business. Yeah, with kids sessions that we do.
So you mentioned you're coaching a few youth athletes and kids. So how does strength and conditioning look for you with when you're working with these younger athletes or children? So what sort of things are you doing and why is it so important at this stage?
I think the main thing that I look for or that I'm aware of is, especially nowadays, the sedentary life they live. Most kids will be sitting down in school for around 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours, sitting on a desk. Yeah, they might have half an hour breaks and things like that, but they're not really doing good movements and the movement that they actually should be doing: squats, hinge movements like deadlifts and things like that, push ups, pull ups, all that. In that sense, what I see is a lot of mistakes and yeah, just a lot of struggling with proprioception of their own bodies. So they, if they do a squat, they might really be in an awkward position or in an off balance position and things like that. So that's something that we really look into teach in our sessions. Just really correct movement patterns that they really embrace uh, how to move properly and correct posture. And from there, we start including more drills and more sport specific and more strength and conditioning movements in that sense.
So what's the
So,
you mentioned a few of the fundamental moves there that you are coaching. So what moves are you doing and why are these important to be doing at this age group? And how does that then follow on to the next age group?
yeah, the main movements that we do: squats, bodyweight movements, squats, push ups, pull ups, carries, all that type of things. And then as they progress and they reach certain stages, then we move into lifting a bit of weights. Yeah, a bit of load. We start working on that hinge movement, so deadlifts, which will eventually will go into Olympic lifting, where they get the literacy to do that and the scale to do that. At the same time, we'll be working agility and coordination all through games and little obstacle courses and circuits that we're quite lucky in the farm. We've got a quite nice environment and nice setting. So yeah, we work those specific movements and those base movements too.
And then since you started implementing this within your coaching, what sort of changes have you seen to these younger athletes to when you maybe have seen problems before you started coaching?
The main big changes that I see is literally the way they move, how they stand, like the posture from where they started to when they are now. And after a few months, it's just, yeah, it's quite amazing. And that's one of the things why I love doing it, because you can really see in a short space of time a big difference. But then also they become more confident. I've had a few kids that were really shy. They didn't do any sports, but they wanted to come in just to get that confidence and learn to move and learn to lift weights a bit too. Obviously, that's a part of it. But yeah, they really came out of their shells and they were even standing a lot more, yeah, tall and chest up and all that type of thing. So yeah, it just really helps them with everything, really.
Yeah, and we often forget the mental and the social and the emotional benefits of strength training or fitness training, not just the physical side as well. So there's different ways that it could benefit people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and I just want to touch on there. You mentioned around obstacle courses. I'm a big user of those within my coaching, and they offer great fun and also lots of different movements you can do with a big group, and you could adapt it as however you wanted to. So, how do you implement obstacle courses into your coaching, and what do they look like as well?
They might not look as very conventional things because obviously we are based on a farm. We have tractor tires, we have hay bales, we have kegs, yeah, troughs and things like that. Obviously, we also have cones and ladders and things like that, but we are get creative in that sense. So kids will be doing some jumping, they'll be going through some cones. They may lift a tractor tire between two or three of them. If it's a big one, if it's a small one, maybe between one or two. So it's a bit of collaboration and teamwork there too. But yeah, that's basically how it looks. It's a bit more unconventional. It's still functional, still sometimes more specific depending on the kids. The clubs are interested, but yeah, it looks a bit more unconventional.
But these unconventional sessions, that's where it allows creativity, kids to problem solve, and it's fun and different rather than doing the same thing every week. So I don't think there's anything wrong with being unconventional in your sessions.
Yeah, exactly. I think it also gets them out of the house or out of the indoor environment. Obviously, now the weather is doing well at the moment, but we take maximum, we take as much as we can for the good weather. So we do try to do the sessions outside and it just gets them out and breathe the fresh air and be in contact with nature too, which is quite important actually.
Definitely, yes. We spoke about strength training for children. Let's just touch on what sort of work you do within the gym with these young athletes. Then how do you start to progress them to start to develop some strength for these kids?
Yeah, the main thing that I try to do with them, as I said before, is correct movement patterns. So everything will be based on that. And I had a kind of mentor coach that I like. The thing that he said is basically you have to earn the right to progress. So once they nail those movements, they can progress into a more load or more skillful movements. So the way I like to coach it is I start with body weight exercises. The main thing once so pull-ups, push-ups, squats, and things like that. Then I start progressing into some load. So doing some hinge movements, can be with a kettlebell, with the dumbbells. And then I start progressing into bar work and a bit of the three big main movements. So bench press, deadlifts, and squats, which are quite safe for everyone. And then I'll start progressing them into different variations of them, into different movements, and start progressing them slowly into Olympic lifting once they've earned that progression. And when they start getting skilled, I mean, can take anywhere from 2 or 3 months all the way to a year. Yeah, you see a lot of good progressions when the kids have a good base. If they move well, if they're aware of their body, it will be a lot faster than other kids.
And what sort of age group are you starting with this off with?
I am starting with 11 to 16, 17-year-olds. Reason why is nowadays, I especially now that I see it, you specialize kids in sport a lot younger. So yeah, it's a matter of re-educating them in the movement patterns and things like that. But I do see a lot of early specialization. I'm a Barcelona fan, so we got Lamine Yamal breaking records and things like that at 16 years old. Yeah, I see that specialization faster and faster. And I don't think necessarily the grassroots clubs are aware of that problem because they see a good kid or a kid that might be good in the sport and they try to specialize him and maybe he doesn't get it, gets injured or he doesn't reach his potential and then they leave him on a side. So that's the sad bit that no one really knows. It's only like the top 2 or 3% that goes to the performance and the leads, but everyone else just falls through the cracks. And I think that's one of the things I want to implement and educate people towards.
I was going to say, what were your thoughts on early specialization? Because I often tell coaches and athletes to expose themselves to multi sports. Firstly, it provides them lots of different ways of moving in different environments, and also allows them to find an opportunity that something they might be successful in as well. So there's a lot of transferable things I found in doing multi sports at an early age.
Yeah, I tend to talk to rugby coaches, parents, because basically that's what I see a lot more in the area. And yeah, I tend to tell them a lot. Kids doing different sports. What are they doing? In fairness, most people that I know here in the area, the kids do football, then they do rugby, then they do cricket. So they are doing three sports, slightly different sports. Two of them are quite transferable. So rugby and football are quite transferable. Cricket, maybe a bit less, but they're throwing, so using their hands. But yeah, I think I would like to see a bit less pressure in terms of early specialization from big clubs, especially football clubs and rugby clubs. Like football, you can get a 12-year-old with a contract pretty much. It's just a bit crazy in that sense.
So if we're asking all these children to do these more sports, often time becomes a barrier for these young athletes, especially when they've got lots of things on, they've got school. So for strength training or developing good strength and movement. What sort of time commitment would you say is needed to get good outcomes? So how long a session might be, or how often per week should they be focusing on things to get good outcomes when they've got a very busy schedule?
Yeah, I think people often forget that a week have 7 days. I'm not saying that you have to train 7 days, obviously, but you have to consider rest. So if you're resting a couple of days a week or having some active recovery in other days, you can definitely fit 2 or 3 strength sessions a week. I think ideally you want to do 2 to 3. More than that, A, you might not recover enough. B, you might not have time, like you say. So yeah, I think 2 times a week will be ideal. And then in terms of length of time, anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour 15, something like that, depending on the skill and the level of the kid or of the person.
And these don't necessarily need to be done in the gym if they're doing, for example, body weight, or they can use items at home as well, or they could be done on
Yeah.
a training pitch or outside. Like you said, you do very versatile pieces of equipment at your farm. Doesn't
Mm.
necessarily need to be done within a gym.
No, I think that's the other thing. People think strength and they immediately think about weights. Yeah, it's a component of that, but you can, with your own body weight, you can definitely do strength. And there's different types of strength too. There's different muscle fibers that you're going to exercise in different ways. Yeah, 2 to 3 times a week will be ideal. Then maybe 1 or 2 can be in the gym. Another one extra can be at home or little weights or with body weight.
So there's quite a few myths I've found around strength training for young athletes or for children. So what sort of myths have you heard around within this area, and how you maybe look to try and demyth these for parents or for coaches who are looking to maybe try and develop their athlete strengths?
I think the main ones, the typical really is strength training is dangerous for kids, or kids need to wait until they are teenagers to lift weights. And it all comes from the misconception of coaching in sports, what I was saying before. Like I think sports coaches don't necessarily know about strength training, about conditioning training, maybe a bit more about conditioning training than strength training. They don't know how to teach that. So because they don't know it, they just don't do it. And because the kids don't do it, then the parents are a bit nervous because they don't do it. They don't know how to do it neither. Um, so I think it's a matter of educating people, saying, "Look, it is safe for your kid to do some strength training, especially as we mentioned before, with the stages of progression and the levels of skill and all that type of things. But it has to be supervised by a professional. I think that's the main barrier and just visibility within the industry. I think it's a matter of educating people that strength training for kids is safe. It's completely safe. You can find some articles. It's safer than doing sports, actually. So it's safer than football, safer than rugby, safer than, in this case, in the USA, American football, because of all the concussions, about all the impact that you have. When you're doing strength training, you're not really having any impact unless you start in doing some Olympic lifting and things like that, which you're gonna then, yeah, have some impacts, have some load in the joints and things like that.
Yeah, I've seen a research
Yeah.
paper around that, as around the injury occurrence within the gym or within strength and conditioning training compared to other sports, and the injury occurrence is a lot lower within a controlled
Mhm.
environment, like with a coach in strength training. I think that is one of
Yeah.
the common myths around this area. What would you do if a parent came to you and said that they didn't want their child to become bulky, or they want to build a load of muscle because within strength training? So how do you look to try and tackle that?
Yeah, I always explain it more from a physiological point of view. So strength training is slightly different than hypertrophy. So obviously with hypertrophy, you have some sort of strength training in different ways, but it's more about nutrition too. It's more about the loads and the type of training that you do for muscle growth and bodybuilding. So I always explain to parents now, like what we're trying to do here is functional fitness and kind of strength and conditioning for your kid. So what we want to do is build correct movement patterns and correct strength. We're not looking to make anyone muscly in that sense. That will come with their own growth, with their nutrition, which we can advise and we can coach on it. But yeah, that's what I would say. It's more about educating the parent too.
So you mentioned you're working a lot with kids between 11 to 16-year-olds. So this around this age group, or especially around the 12, 13, It's going through maturation, so there'll be growth spurts, there'll be a lot of hormonal changes as well. So how do you go around tackling that within your strength training around changes in limbs or changes in bone density or and so on?
I think the first thing will be assessing their form. If they're starting with us or if they have been doing sessions with us for a while, they know the environment and then how the sessions will be running. We have check-ins in place to make sure that we're constantly communicating with the kids and with the parents. We obviously have some parent evenings, for so to say, because they're not the typical parent evenings in schools where we just sit down and talk. Yeah, we will sit down and talk, but we might do a little session with the parents so they can join too. I think in the sense of issues and growth spurs and muscle pain and things like that, it's all about managing those movements, managing the load, managing the intensity to go through those changes and hormonal changes that they will have. And I think also a matter of emotional and mindset coaching is very important, and that's often neglected. We have to really talk to the kid, really talk to the parent and engage with them and see where they at and how they're going through those situations.
And you just touched on one of your passions there around building resilience, especially for these young athletes and when playing in sport, but also resilience in daily life. Let's talk about building mental resilience for these young kids. So how do you start to go about doing that within your training and your coaching?
Yeah, I think there's something already in fitness and sport that make you resilient, and it's obviously when you're tired that you have to perform or that last rep, that last effort that you had to make. I think that itself builds resilience. So kids really learn about resilience and being mindful and hardworking by doing sport and encouraging that culture, which will then translate into other areas of life. For instance, I know kids nowadays, they get a lot of, especially teenagers, when they get to the GCSEs level, A levels, they get a lot of stress because they want to go to uni maybe, or they have the pressure of their families and things like that. I know it's changing a little bit now, but with social media also you get a lot of stress and emotional stress and what people are going to think about me and all that type of thing. And I think exercise and fitness builds that resilience and build that confidence um, to not only do it in the gym but also in the daily life and just be in touch with the emotions of people too.
And how does
And how
that
it
collaborate with
collaborate
with your
with your
training that you're doing at the moment? So, are you integrating some drills within your training to start to build resilience? Or are you doing it with every exercise? So, how do you start to build that, and then also start to see how they're getting on, looking at their progress as well?
well, there's different ways within exercise. Obviously, we got reps and weights and efforts and RP. We use RP quite a lot. So obviously, we want to say sometimes they say we want to be working at 7, 8 of your RP, but see if we can push it a bit up to 9. I think you can. Yeah, we coach in coach situations. Like, oh, I think maybe you can add a little bit more, maybe a fractional weight, a 125 or a 2.5 kilo fractional weight. You can include that in your set, in the last set. Just try it out. Let's see if that works. But also really talking to them and just seeing where their is at. So things like negative thoughts or self doubt or self consciousness, just talking to them really, which is more kind of mental fitness, I would say, or physical or psychological fitness. See how stressed they are using different questionnaires and different tests. Really, so that's one of the ways that we approach it. And yeah, just trying to scale and put a bit of a score on how their mental well-being is too. So we can then work on their mindset and their resilience.
Let's just finish off on a bit of an example and how you might tackle around a scenario. So, if you have a young child or an athlete who might give up all the time whenever they might be losing or whenever they can't succeed in an exercise, for example, lift a certain weight or jump onto a box at a certain height or jump over something and they just instantly give up, how might you start to go about looking to change their mindset with this child?
Yeah. So the main thing that I ask them is, how do they feel? Do they feel anxious? Do they feel sad? Do they feel defeated? I ask them about what coping mechanisms they have. Do they then go and isolate? Or they go and talk to their parents? So we build a bit of an image of what the situation is and the consequence of that situation is. And then from there, we, like I said before, we try to challenge those negative thoughts and maybe create a different situation so they can be in a more positive mindset and more positive mind frame. So that where they can open up a little bit more and get more confident that, say, for instance, in a defeat situation, they know that's just part of the game. That's just part of their progression. And hopefully that defeat will lead to then many other victories, for instance. So that's the way that we can approach that situation.
No, thank you very much, Francisco, and some great insights there and some stuff we haven't spoken around before, especially around lifting weights for kids and also building mental resilience as well, which is a key part that people often forget around how powerful the mind might be around kids' developments and athlete in and out of sports as well. So thank you very much for sharing your insights there. Have you got any way that if anyone's got any questions or wants to follow up on anything you mentioned here that they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, Isaac. They can get in touch by social media. So I'm on social media and Instagram at Rustiq Fit, Rustiq with a Q. On Facebook, I'm on Rustiq Fitness, so you can find us there. You can Google us too. Obviously, Rustiq with a Q, which is a bit confusing. But yeah, we're based in Winsley. You get all the contact form through there, and you can find our emails and your phone numbers through there. And yeah, we're happy to help anyone. That's our mission, just to try to help as many people as possible. I mentioned about kids, but we also coach adults, and I have a 85-year-old lady that comes to us and she's really pleased with what we do and she's really improved with her health. So yeah, anywhere from 11 to the 90s, in the 90s, with everyone really. And it'd be great to have a nation more physically active and healthier.
And I presume people will be able to see what weird stuff you're doing on the farm within your training as well and your social media.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. We got an interesting setup in the farm. There's quite a lot of businesses in the family and there's a lot of dogs around. There's some sheep around too. So yeah, it's always fun and interesting in the farm.
It'd be good to see, some unconventional training methods. So thank you very much, Francisco, for your time. Appreciate it for coming on and hopefully we'll speak to you soon.
Cool. Thank you too, Isaac.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Athletic Skills Podcast. I hope you enjoyed our discussion and found it helpful in learning more about impacting your youth athletes' movement and physical development. If you did enjoy this episode, please take a moment to give us a subscribe and share to any other coaches or teachers that you think it may help. Also, if you have any feedback or topics that you'd like us to cover in future episodes, please feel free to reach out to us on social media or on the email in the description. And we'll be more than happy to try and tackle those challenges you are facing as a sports coach or a PE teacher. Thank you very much, guys, for listening. I look forward to speaking to you soon.